You are about to hear the world's only podcast hosted by a Brooklyn-based, songwriting, Jesus-loving couple. I'm Melinda May.
I'm Trevor Knight, and this is Stronger Voices.
Each episode is simply one of our personal conversations recorded and shared with you in hopes you'll be encouraged.
We're glad to have you with us today, and we hope you enjoy this episode of Stronger Voices. Beepity beep beep boop bop bow.
That is Trevor's incredibly professional way. That is how the pros...
I gotta make sure the levels are good.
Check the
It's
mics.
important when you're checking mic levels to test at various frequencies.
Wow.
Everyone knows this.
That's how the pros do
Well, I
it.
guess the people who are, experienced in checking microphones.
Unlike myself.
Unlike someone...
Unlike the woman who grew up with a sound system that was always set up in the living room so I could come home from school and play music into microphones. But yes.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
And setting up an entire sound system to play at nursing homes and different churches throughout northeastern Pennsylvania with my family who was a band. And
yeah, that that probably counts. That probably counts towards something.
I thought you were going to say it doesn't. I thought you'd be like, yeah, that doesn't
yeah, that
matter.
definitely counts. That definitely counts.
No, honestly, though, I'm being completely honest. I learned nothing from that.
What do you mean? You didn't learn nothing?
I didn't learn, that's true. I knew what an XLR cable was. I knew where to plug things into.
Yeah, you know what cords go into what ports and things like that.
A little bit, but I learned most of that stuff from setting up church and setting up the sound system every Sunday. So, I don't know.
What would be your biggest takeaway from your many hundreds of hours as a setup woman for various sound systems?
Ooh.
If you were going to take away a lesson that you learned and something interesting to pass along to someone who has no idea what's going on with all those cables.
I would say if you have no idea what's going on with all those cables, sit down. Go get yourself a coffee and sit down.
So you're not a fan of the active bystander who comes who gets a very concerned look on their face and comes and squats right next to the sound box and tries to look at it really hard and maybe that'll help the whatever problem is occurring.
I will say this: when services start, service has to start at 11, and I'm trying to troubleshoot this problem. I have no idea what's going on or how to fix it, and there's a bunch of people saying maybe it's this, maybe it's that. That's difficult to manage because now I'm managing this technical problem, and I'm also managing the people behind me. And instead of just focusing on troubleshooting this technical problem, I'm thinking about how to make sure you feel taken care of, So that's difficult.
So you'd rather that person go sit down.
Well, there's another side of this coin, right? I've been that person many times that's just like, I'm going to hang out here and listen to what you're talking about so I can learn something. And that couldn't have been easy for these people I was learning from, but there's only one way to do it. So your options are, if you don't know what all those cables are and you really want to learn, then you can hang around and learn. But I'll tell you this, there've definitely, troubleshooting anything takes experience, but also just like a good troubleshooter. You could have all the experience in the world about this thing, but if you're a horrible troubleshooter and you don't know how to isolate variables and you know what I mean?
Sure.
And then you're going to have a hard time, and it works the other way too. If you know nothing about sound, but I feel like you'd be good at this. Right.
But if you know how to troubleshoot?
Yeah, because you're a smart person and you understand things.
This is interesting. I've never thought of it this way, but a lot of problems, including what you're talking about, isolating variables, I've never heard it described that way, but that's the scientific method.
Yeah.
It's interesting that when you learn the scientific method or you learn basic science when you're a little kid, that helps you with this problem, isolating a variable, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
I never thought of it that way.
But if you change 4 things at once, you're never going to make any progress. You got to change one thing at a time and try it. and one thing and try it, or whatever the situation calls for. Maybe it's more than one thing because it depends on the situation. But I will say this to answer your original question. More often than not, in my experience, turn it off and turn it on.
Turn it off and turn it on. There you have it, folks.
Turn it off, turn it on.
You know, I saw a meme recently. I really like memes, and I think they are. I just like how they speak to culture and they're funny, you know?
Yeah.
And I saw a meme that was like, why don't you sleep on it? Is the human equivalent of turn it off and turn it back on again.
It's so true. Okay. I'm just going to turn myself off. Turn myself on.
I would make this decision, but I'm going to just turn myself off for 8 hours. I'm going to turn myself back on. We're going to reevaluate the situation.
It's kind of similar because a lot of times what happens is there's a problem with like the software when you turn something on or the drivers in something, and you literally like you just need to start it over.
Or there's too many background processes going on and you don't know they're going on because like all these programs have launched background processes and they're all interfering and they're just clogging up the bandwidth, and you just need to shut them all down.
Exactly. And my point is like that is a pretty good metaphor for what's going on with me too. Okay, there's too many background processes. There's too many things. I gotta sleep on
that's
it.
what you would give to people as a lesson you've learned from your experience.
Absolutely.
Turn it off, turn it on.
Before you do anything, before you troubleshoot anything, restart. Restart first.
So
restart first.
Now, non-technical piece of advice, something qualitative. What did you learn from your years of working with sound systems and being the go-to person for all the equipment?
So I'm going to bring up two things. And one is, what did I learn from being in a band with my parents and doing sound there and setting up the sound system and tearing it down and all that stuff. And here's what I learned. And this is an easy question for me because I remember when I learned this. I will never forget it. And I tell people this all the time. So when I was like a teenager in this band with my parents, we had, a sound system. We had monitors so you can hear yourself. And it was always wrong. I can't hear myself. I'm too loud in the monitors. My dad's too loud in the monitors. The guitar's too loud in the monitors. It's never right. And somewhere along the way, as a teenager, I remember deciding, I no longer care about this. I will no longer care about this at all. I know the song. If I can't hear myself, I'll do it by muscle memory. This is a never-ending battle. I don't care. And that has been a blessing in some ways and a bad thing in some ways, because when I first started playing with my band and we were playing venues in New York.
Melinda May band.
Yeah, exactly.
In New York.
Good thing to clarify. So now I'm an adult and I have my own thing going on, and I'm playing in very professional venues in New York City
and it's your own music.
Exactly. That have a professional sound guy, and I'm with my band, and there is time for sound check, and the sound guy goes, "Okay, what do you need in your monitors?" I'm like, "It's good. Just go." And the members of my band had to be like, "Melinda, why do you do that?" Like, what if you can't hear yourself in the monitor, just say, "Can you turn up my vocal a little bit?" But I psyched myself out for years being like, "Nope, not going to look at this, not going to care about this. I know the song, I've practiced the song. If I can't hear myself, I'll be fine. I'm going to sing it." And that works a lot of the time. It's a good thing because as you're doing open mics and as you're performing at different venues, this will happen pretty consistently where you can't hear yourself, something's too loud, something's not right.
And you just have to go with it.
Yeah, like if you have in-ears and something gets messed up and now the bass is too loud, and now take one out and do it by muscle memory if you know the song. Anyway, but that's a different question then. That's like as a performer, but as a technical person, a qualitative thing.
So sorry, just to recap that. What was the lesson you learned there? That you should care about it, or that it was good that you didn't care about your
That's such a good question. I would say the lesson I learned is to care about it less. Don't care about it. Don't worry about it. It's never going to be perfect.
You do have to care the right amount, though, because like you said, at those shows, when you're playing your own music and you're playing with some other people, and you just poo-pooed the sound check as something you don't need to do, you probably could have had a better experience had you done mess with the monitors a little bit.
I'm sorry, you just poo-pooed the sound check as something you don't need to do. Yes, Trevor, you're right about
And
this.
to be fair, the show we did together on November 20th, 2019 at Rockwood Music Hall, that was the first show I had ever done where I had a good sound guy like you're talking about.
Mhm.
That night, I did that exact same thing because, like, all the open mics I ever played and all the previous shows I ever played, I never did them with anyone else. It was just me.
Yeah.
So if I could hear myself a little bit, that was fine. If
Yeah.
I could hear the piano a little bit, that was fine. So when we set up for that show, when we played together, there was your vocal, my vocal, your guitar, and my keyboard. And when we were doing the sound check, the guy in the sound booth is in the back of the room, was like, "How does it sound to you?" And I was like, "Do you like it? Like, does it sound good to you?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah, I guess." But thinking about this now, like, why would I care how it sounds to this guy who's sitting by himself in a sound booth? Like, I should care much more how it sounds to me, but I didn't care at all.
Exactly.
I didn't even, like, think about those things.
Certain things, too. It is very difficult to play guitar, or maybe any instrument, but my experience, guitar, when you cannot hear the guitar at all. It's hard. And because your brain is somehow related to that, it's this weird thing that happens. Like, I can memorize the song, but if I can't hear the chords being played,
Sure.
for some reason, all of a sudden, I can't remember the chords. It's like this weird...
Well, that would be the same as, like, singing but not being able to hear your own voice.
I have sung before and not been able to hear my own voice, and I do it by just...
But you can... Like, you have a concept for how it sounds because it's resonating in your own head.
Exactly.
When you're playing the guitar, it's not doing that.
Right.
You can't, like, feel... I mean, you can feel some vibration, but you're not going to be able to feel the tone and the pitch like you can when you're singing.
Exactly. And then I lose... And then it's really hard to keep track of what chords you're playing because I'm not paying attention to the shapes my fingers are making while I'm playing guitar. I'm listening to how it sounds.
It's muscle memory.
Exactly. And then since I don't have the sound of it, I sort of get into the song and I forget. It's really hard. So it's a little bit important, but that's where I learned that it's not that.
Okay. So I hijacked that lesson just a little bit, but so I guess the lesson you learned is don't care about it too much.
Let it go.
Yeah.
You got either you can do this, and I would tell myself that, like, either you're a singer and you can do this or you can't. You can't blame a bad set on sound. Like, sometimes that's the reality of it, but that's not a good practice. Don't do that. You're a professional. If you're going to be a singer, if you're going to be up here singing, you need to be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I eventually I got to this place when I was like 17 where I'm like, this is how it is. It's always going to be this way. And I'm just going to do it. And I'm no longer going to let myself be held back by what I can hear in my monitors or my in-ears.
Right.
So there's that. And then qualitative thing from being the technical person. Man, that's such a good question. What did I learn from that? I guess it would be listen to everybody's, not everybody's, but if someone is telling you that they know something or they have a suggestion, you don't have to try it, but listen to it, as opposed to like, oh God, I'm so stuck with this problem. I already tried that. Oh, that's not going to work. You have to remain open to your team and what they're saying, what they told you they tried, So maybe something like that.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah, it's very easy to just, especially when you're troubleshooting something and you're under a time constraint.
Zone everyone else out.
Exactly. And you're just like, but sometimes somebody on your team who you think, wouldn't understand the software or whatever that you're looking at says something. You're like, okay, I didn't think of that. Let me try that. And it works.
If there's too many voices, it becomes a problem. And if it's people that don't really know what's going on, it's not helpful.
Well, yes, that becomes what we were discussing earlier.
Yeah. Do you miss doing that stuff?
Definitely.
What about it do you miss? Do you miss the actual technical stuff? Do you miss being in a production and all the feelings that go into that? Do you miss being a leader on a team? What do you miss about it?
Man, that's a really good question. I think I miss, it's a cool thing sometimes to be what I have come to call an underrower. Do you know what an underrower is?
someone that makes the machine go but doesn't get any credit for it?
Yeah, so I got this concept from my dad, and I have no idea a lot about this, if it's exactly true or whatever. It probably is. But I have this picture. There is a giant ship on a giant sea. And way, way back in the old days, there's like a bunch of people way down beneath the deck, and they're all smashed up against each other, and there's a ton of them, and no one sees them, and they're just down there and rowing, you know? And which is interesting.
That's how boats got around back in the day.
Yeah. So I guess it is true. And and so I've always thought of that concept. My dad told me this at some point. He was like, sometimes you're an underrower. You're just down in there. You're sweaty. Nobody sees you, but you're the one making this giant ship go.
Right.
And there's something really satisfying about that sometimes.
No, I know exactly what you mean. And I used to say something very similar. And it's interesting because I actually used to row, but I never used the underrower analogy. But when I was working in finance and when I was working for a church, I used to view myself and even voice myself as like, I'm the fullback of this operation. Like,
wow.
I'm going to, and even if, like in finance, when I was training a few people to take over my job, I would say, live your day-to-day like you're the fullback of this team and things will be fine. And it's a football analogy.
No, you said cornerback. Sorry.
What?
Didn't you tell me a really good... isn't this about a cornerback? Or no, fullback?
No, fullback.
Sorry, go on.
A cornerback is a defensive position that I used to play when I played football.
Oh.
But a fullback is an offensive position.
Sorry, go on with what you were actually saying. I apologize.
A fullback, very similarly, gets almost no glory, takes all the worst hits on the team. Like so the you know who the quarterback is, obviously. Everyone knows who that is. The halfback is also colloquially just known as the running back. But he carries the ball a lot. He makes a lot of good plays.
Gets the glory.
The fullback is technically also a running back, but you never even know who this guy is. Unless you have played football or you know a lot about football, no one would be able to point out who the fullback is on the field. But most of the time, behind the quarterback, there are two guys, not just one. Maybe not most of the time, but in a lot of offensive formations. And the fullback is the guy who runs ahead of the halfback, or who most people think of as the main running back, and just hits the first person and makes a hole for the guy running behind him.
Wow.
And let's say it's a pass play. If the quarterback drops back to make a pass, normally the fullback is the guy who protects him in the pocket. So the fullback all the defensive linemen, the biggest, scariest guys on the field, are crashing through the line. He has to body him up to protect the quarterback.
Yeah.
And if it's a run play up the middle, the quarterback hands it to the guy behind him. He goes through and he hits the middle linebacker right in the numbers, because he has to make a hole for this person. And every once a blue moon, you'll get, if you're right on the goal line and your team has 1 yard before a touchdown, every once in a while, maybe once every 5 games, they'll give it to the fullback because he's normally big and strong, and there's going to be a big collision, and he'll take it in for a touchdown. Or every once in a while, he'll catch a swing pass off to the side from the quarterback and gain a few yards. So, like, as a fullback, you take all the hits,
So let's just get this straight for people who don't know football.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know as much about football as you do.
Right.
But so this guy just plows in head first, full force, just to make a hole.
Just to make a hole
so
for the guy
other
behind
guy
him with the ball. Yeah.
Can get the glory.
Yeah.
Right. And okay, exactly.
Or if you're not charging forward and the quarterback drops back to make a pass, you're the guy between the quarterback and all the guys trying to tackle the quarterback, and you have to hit the first guy who comes through. And every once in a while, you get the ball and you get a yard or two. But your job is not to score points for your team. It's just not. It's to make other people score points.
Wow.
It's to carve a hole so other people can play their positions well.
Yeah.
And so, like, I totally get that analogy of being an underrower. Like, that's how I viewed, like, my job in a lot of the roles I've been in my life. It's just, like, be a fullback. Run through the line, hit the middle linebacker in the numbers, and someone else will get the credit, someone else will get the glory, whatever. The team
Wow.
will move forward, and all your causes will move forward if your team moves forward.
Yeah. And then every once in a while,
Every once in a while,
you'll
you get
get
your
the
moment in the
ball.
sun, and
Yeah.
there's 1 yard to go for the touchdown, and the coach is like, give it to the fullback because he can body people up,
Wow. I knew that you would understand that because I know that you have had that attitude in your life where just get the work done, keep your head down, do things well. It's going to work out,
And generally it does.
Yeah,
Generally
absolutely.
It does.
Yeah. And there's something really fulfilling about that.
And I think there's biblical backing to that mindset. God says those who humble themselves will be exalted, and those who exalt themselves will be humbled.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be really cocky or really haughty or really high on yourself if you're the underrower in a ship and you're sweating and no one can see you. It's hard to be really cocky if you're the fullback and you're hitting the biggest guys on the team every play and you're never getting the ball, So yeah,
I mean, the Bible says, put other people's interests before your own, and put other people first, and consider other people more significant than you, or maybe maybe that's the wrong word, but definitely a lot about putting other people first and lifting up other people, and let God, he who humbles himself will be exalted, just as you said. And it's an inspiring thing, and there's so much freedom in that. And sometimes when I'm worried about, what should I be doing to move forward, I kind of come back to, this is kind of recently, I guess, but, you kind of come back to, if you focus on loving other people, seek the kingdom first, the Bible says, seek the kingdom first, and these things will be added to you. So if you focus on loving other people, if you focus on making sure the people around you are good, if you look for God in the conversations that you have, if you look for God within your own thoughts, if you look for Jesus and how to glorify Jesus in your own heart, it's going to work out. It's going to be fine, because the Bible says, seek the kingdom first, and these things will be added to you. So to me, it's a similar thing of being an underrower. Just do what you have to do. Take care of other people. You'll get God will take care of it. He will take care of it.
He will. He will. And there's so many benefits to that attitude, I think. One, you're progressing the goals of your team, and you will benefit from that. And also, like, something that does happen when you live your life like that, when you're the one taking hits and you're the one doing work when no one sees it, like, one day you will look around and you will be really strong and really tough, and no one will mess with you, because you've spent your days taking lumps, and it has an effect on you. It makes you strong, it makes you tough, and it makes you so that when bad times come, you're so prepared to deal with them.
Yeah. And you're right, it does. It just makes you stronger.
You said freeing before too, but there is something fulfilling about doing simple, honest work. There's something about doing tasks that aren't glorious that is strangely satisfying. I'm not sure why, and maybe that's not for everyone, but for me, when it's presented to me that this is my lot for this moment, is to do this task, there's satisfaction in that.
Yeah, I agree. I do think everybody feels that way. This is why the restaurant industry, part of the reason why the restaurant industry is so fun, because everybody, yes, it has its issues, but for the most part, it's so fun because everybody's kind of in on it. Everybody knows their team. Everybody knows that they're kind of, it kind of puts you in a position that other people aren't in. They kind of, the guests don't see what's going on.
Oh, exactly.
Behind the scenes and stuff, and that like just creates this sort of camaraderie, and
it's like that in finance too. It's like that. It's like that in sports.
Yeah.
You get closer to the people around you when you bond through a mutual experience, especially if that experience is hard.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing something difficult and not glorious, it brings you closer to the people around you who are doing the same thing.
Yeah, I actually have this theory that is the only way that anyone ever makes friends
Is by doing hard things with them.
is by being on a mission together.
Mm.
And maybe that mission is when you're 8 years old and you're like, okay, we're going to leave at this time. We're going to bike to, this is my friend
Sure,
Lindsay
yeah,
and I.
yeah, yeah.
All right, we're going to leave at this time. We're going to bike here and do this. And maybe that's the mission. And then, you're both kind of working towards it. Or we would make up these dances, or we would.
Or you had a class with someone and you were working on the same stuff. Or you played on a
Exactly.
sports team with them and you were working towards the
Exactly.
same mission.
And
yeah.
then it's like, okay, we're done with practice. Let's go do something fun now.
Yeah.
And that is literally the only way that friendships are built. Think about it. You're an adult and you meet.
Yeah, there aren't apps. Maybe there are. I don't know any. But there aren't, like, prominent platforms out there that are, like, matching you up with random people just to be friends.
But even if there were, I guess my argument here, or my idea here is that it wouldn't actually work.
Mm.
Imagine I meet a girl and I'm like, oh, this girl's awesome. I want to be friends with this girl. And then you just, go out to dinner a bunch, which that maybe it'll work, but it doesn't stick. But there's something about, being on this mission together, whatever the mission is. It might be something really little, like, okay, we need to figure out this thing, or we're going to go here and experience this thing together, and it's going to be like new and exciting, but we're going to figure it out. But the thing that I think makes anybody any friends is you're on a mission together. That's why people in our church are still friends, because every Sunday,
You're so right. That is that's so true. Humans were just meant to work with other people for common goals. They just were. And God says that too. God mentions that too. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there. And he says where 2 agree in prayer, it will be done.
Yeah.
There's a reason why Jesus gives us an example to pray, and he does it in the collective tense. It's we and our bread, because life and faith is a team sport, and it works better with other people, and it makes you stronger, and it brings you closer to them. Humans were just meant to interact with other people.
Yeah, definitely. But specifically, to have a purpose together, to have like a unifying purpose. And I think that that's what actually makes relationships, even if the purpose, no matter how big or small it is, if you have that, okay, we're both trying to do this thing. I think it's what really makes any relationship, which is interesting, because that's just how people work. And I also think, as you mentioned, that's how we're supposed to be. And we're like, okay, we know our goal is Christ, and we're set on the kingdom, and we're in it together. And there's something that just automatically bonds you there.
Mm-hmm. This has been such a good conversation. I've had such a good time.
It's been a 30-minute and 37-second conversation. So I think it might be time for a silly question.
Okay. Silly question. Well, we didn't talk about anything that's going on in our lives right now. So
let's talk about
quick.
that.
So I think for the silly question, we'll just say, what's something about your current endeavors that you want the listeners to know right now?
I have new music out. If you're listening to this, I definitely have new music out. So check Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, wherever it is you listen to music, and listen to Red Leather Head Turner. And then I have a few songs coming up after that. And I'm really excited to release more music. That's, I'm at this point with it. It's kind of like, well, that's what I do. And that's what I hope people know that I do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, oh, I'm releasing music. Well, yes, of course I am, because
it's your job.
That's what I do. Right. I write songs and I release them. So hopefully, that's not a shock to anyone who's listening. And hopefully everyone who's listening follows me somewhere on Instagram or Spotify or something.
Or is subscribed to this podcast or our YouTube channel or something, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for that song, Red Leather Head Turner.
Me too.
I wanted to.
You're always humming it.
I am. It's such a good song.
Yeah.
It gets stuck in your head. And that little post-chorus after, the first chorus into second verse.
It's good.
It's so good.
I like it.
It
so
just
much.
hits just right.
I'm so thankful.
Shout out to Tim Husty for all his work on that song.
Always shout out to Tim Husty when we're talking about our music.
Jay
always.
Preston did some cool things on that song too.
Jay Preston does cool things on all the songs.
That's true.
All the songs he touches, he does cool things on.
Every song I've recorded there, he's done all my vocals.
Oh my! I could do a whole podcast on how good Jay Preston is at recording vocals. Maybe we should do that.
Maybe we should.
Seriously, that is
he
a
has
whole.
A gift.
We've had this conversation a lot, but we can literally talk for 20 minutes about
anything. Pretty much anything.
Well, about anything. That's true. But we have talked many times for a long time about how talented Jay Preston is at recording vocals and getting good vocal takes and stuff. And he's good.
He is good. Yeah. I would say the same thing to that question. If you're listening to this, I have new music out. The date of this recording is September 3rd. So I just came out with a song called Twists and Turns 2 days ago on September 1st. People are listening to it, and I've gotten some good feedback on it. So if you haven't heard it yet, I'd love for you to give it a listen, add it to a playlist if you are so inclined. And then, I have a lot of new stuff coming out. I have a song on the 1st of every month until something happens that I can no longer do that. And that will hopefully be in the very distant future, but I already have the next 5 or 6 months lined up. So the 1st of every month, if you're listening to this, I will be putting out a new song. You can find it by searching Trevor Knight on whatever platform you choose.
October 1st, Easy is coming out. And I'm excited about it because I love that song.
I love that song too. It turned out really well.
It did, and I love the cover art, and I just love everything about it. I'm excited to have that on Spotify.
Yeah, we could have a podcast about that song too. It was kind of there's a lot of rigmarole involved in that, including a call with my distributor about the title and the cover art and all sorts of things. But we'll save that discussion for another time.
Yeah.
So yes, we both have a ton of new music coming out, and you should definitely listen to it because it's some of our best stuff. Would you agree?
I love your attitude, and you always say we haven't written our best songs yet. And Trevor, I just really think that that's true. I just really think that it is. And so I always think that the song I'm putting out is better than the last one. And I do. It seems to be the case, so I'm so grateful. I have a song coming out called Yes, Yes. It's probably going to be out November 9th. And man, that song means a lot to me.
It's so good.
Man,
it's so good.
I want to do a podcast about that, Trevor, where I only talk about the lyrics. Because I have so much to say about that song. And then I have a song coming out, I think, October 9th called Chemicals. And
that's a Melinda May staple from way back.
That is a song we should do a podcast about because I wrote that song first. I mean, it's kind of a different song than when I first wrote it. It's not a different song, but it has changed a lot because I first wrote that song in 2012. Is that right? Yeah, 2012.
When you first moved here or right before you moved here?
Before I moved to New York, I wrote that song. But it's the first song that I played at an open in New York City. I visited New York City before I moved here, and I played this very famous open mic called Bar 4. And anyway, I was so nervous to play that song because it mentions God. And it was everybody else that had gone before me at this open mic was very folksy and deep and cool and edgy. And
that song is deep and edgy, to be fair.
It really didn't seem so to me at all. And especially the version of it that I played in 2012. It wasn't. Anyway, we could talk about that another time too. We have a lot to talk about, guys. I hope you're ready. Yeah. I hope you're subscribed.
We got a lot of content coming up that you will enjoy.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So
yeah, thanks for joining us today. This was I had such a good time recording this. Just nice, relaxed, free-flowing stream of consciousness discussion.
I think you like talking to me.
You know?
I don't know. I think
you're right. I think you're right about that.
I think you might like it.
I think I have a hunch that you relatively enjoy it as well.
That's a little forward.
A little forward, okay. We'll stick to I just enjoy it, and you're just tolerating, or you're just being polite.
It's nice.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today, folks. We'll see you next time.
See you next episode. If you liked this episode, send it to someone you love. Also, follow us on Instagram at Stronger Voices Podcast.
You can email us at contact@strongervoicespodcast.com. We appreciate you spending your time with us today, and we'll see you for the next episode.